Okay, here we are on the other side of the house. You see those two banks right there with the valley in between them? This is a shorter run by about 3 or 4 feet shorter than the other one, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a pipe in, and that pipe goes between the two houses. That was that weekend. This was probably the next day or later the afternoon that we put another pipe in on the other side of the house. But you can see the banks, and those two banks of dirt were eventually hauled off by the golf course. They had a huge storm that wiped out a lot of places on the golf course right after this job was done, and they needed dirt to fill in the erosion. So they came and hauled off those two banks of dirt. The golf course did. And then later on, I have another video where later on I had to put another pipe in. This pipe goes from between the two houses. I put a drain right where the lake started. Right where the lake started between the two houses is where the drain is going to start. And we had the water levels out again. We were measuring. We made sure we had positive drop. But again, I turned a retention basin into detention. The water didn't stay on the property. It stayed long enough for that pipe to drain it. If I got a big lake after a deluge, a quick storm that went through like in 20 minutes and dumped a half an inch of rain in a half an hour, that was huge. At least the water got off the property. As soon as it stopped raining, the property was drained properly. And right now we're setting up the water levels again. And we're checking the drop, and we're going to fill it in again just like we did on the other side. But this was money I had to spend. This was labor I had to spend. This was something I had to do to defuse a booby trap. Okay? They booby trapped my lot 20 years ago. Whoever, why, whatever. I know I was from out of town. I wasn't a local. I was a California investor, and I hadn't bought the other two lots. When they decided to drop the elevation, finished floor elevation of my lot, and make me the drainage mule, I'll call myself the drainage mule up here, because they had it set up that forever and ever, every time it rained, all the water was going to stay on my lot. And a little advice to anybody who lives in the any adult community, any planned neighborhood community, anywhere where it's blueprinted like here, every elevation, everything, the house, the lots, everything had an elevation assigned to it, a blueprinted elevation, to make sure for proper drainage. And that all got defeated. When they raised my property line with the golf course 2 feet, and then they put a berm between my lot and the golf course property line that had just been raised, and then they lowered my house foundation, the pad, by 2.5 inches. It was a perfect storm. The perfect storm that for 1,000 years, as long as the house was here and I didn't know about it, and I was stupid enough to just sit there and watch it happen every time it rained, but I got involved. I called a surveyor. I talked to local people. A lady I had dealt with as a business for years, when I told her about having lakes between my house when it rained and my patio partially going underwater, she told me, she goes, "That isn't right. You better look into it. It's not right." And by that time, I had already gotten a letter. I had the letter in my hand from Woody Scouten that Tract A was out of compliance for drainage. It had been filled in and it was out of compliance. So, and as I said in other videos, Woody Scouten, who was the engineer out here when everything was being developed, when him and Phil Marcotte and Edward Kelly, who was one of the first board members as Sundance Active Adult, I think he was probably the second person elected to the board, Charlie Waters being the first. They were here, and Woody Scouten gave me permission. He said, do what you have to do to get the water off your lot. He more or less agreed, or it was assumed he agreed, that the golf course is designated drainage. These houses aren't for storage. These lots up here, these residential lots, were not built. They're not supposed to be used for storage. But I would venture to say, I will estimate, or I will guess, or take what they call a wag, a wild-ass guess, that this is tribal knowledge for most golf course communities. That golf course was part of an urban model, an urban community model. Urban, city. This plan was developed over in North Scottsdale probably 3 years before they ever sold the house up here on this side of the lake. And all the engineers were working under the assumption, or working under the manifest, that that golf course is there for drainage of all lots. Okay, it's a neutral place, a skid plate. It's where the water goes in a storm. And during the whole process of designing all the elevations, all the walkways, all the access easements, all the emergency access easements were designed with that concept that the golf course is sacrificial. All right, it's a play area. And we have to save the houses. We save the houses by dumping all the water that could be on the houses, on their lots. We dump it onto the golf course. Well, when that plan left North Phoenix, I believe years ago, when they told me it was going to Buckeye, I'm sure every engineer said, at least we did our job right. We understand it's going to Buckeye. And when it gets out there, anything can happen. And it did. You took this urban plan, urban city, blueprinted, every elevation for every house, all the drainage, everything was blueprinted to work where the golf course was going to take the hit in the storm. And nothing could be further from the truth. When that plan got out here with the builders and the city folk, and it was made understood to anybody who was a city person or an engineer or a politician or anybody part of the golf course development planning commissions, that the golf course was going to be the golden goose for Buckeye. It was going to bring in business. It was more important than the people, these lots, the thought that those lots above the golf course are going to dump their water onto our course every time it rains. Get over it. It isn't going to happen. The golf course is going to be the 900-pound gorilla up here. All right? Everything is going to be the focus of all the work, all the planning, all the cultural, the social engineering, what I call the pecking order, the hierarchy in the neighborhood. We're going to establish the way we want it built. All right, this plan is only a rough draft. And all those lots, and especially that guy from California who hasn't joined any of our churches, he hasn't joined any of our lodges, nobody knows who he is, nobody's ever heard of him, nobody even, when you take and plug his name into the census for state of California, nobody's ever seen that name before. Who the hell is he? Well, since he's an unknown, he and his neighbors up there are going to bear the brunt. Okay, the golf course is not going to be a place where water goes in a storm. All right, so they put a lien against my house, a cloud on my title. This was a permanent lien put onto my house by the builder and the town of Buckeye. And the engineer that signed the and stamped the permit for my house allowed the builder to drop my finished floor elevations 2.5 inches. So the house is out of compliance. And one thing about being in an HOA, a problem like this, you can't bring it to the HOA or take it to court or do anything because they have a 2-year statute of limitations. If you don't find a deficiency like this in 2 years with your property, and then if you do find a deficiency, if you don't act on it immediately, you have no recourse, no remedy. You have to eat it. So all this work and all this money and all the money I paid to do this work was extra. It was something that I had to do because the people out here didn't think that I should get what I paid for. But this was one time, like I said, urbanization. What happened out here with this urban plan? I figure Buckeye, one of the most bucolic, 20 years ago, Buckeye was one of the most bucolic towns 25 years ago in the valley. A huge land area with not very many people, and everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody in Buckeye. But nobody knew me, and I didn't even know that Monroe Street existed. The only thing I knew about Buckeye before I bought these 3 houses was Watson Road and I-10. If it didn't happen out here at Watson Road and I-10, that's what I considered Buckeye was. Okay? I feel like I was taken advantage of. Like I said, when that plan got out here, that urban plan, it got out here in bucolic Buckeye, and they said, look, this doesn't work for us. And we're outside the 12-mile limit. We're in Buckeye. And we're out of the jurisdiction of most state agencies. Most state agency and county agencies have no jurisdiction in Buckeye. Let me guarantee you that. Maybe you found out already by yourself. But we're at the end, so I'm going to get off here right now and stop this video. I said what I wanted to say. And right here, stop.